Remember the 5th of November, the gunpowder treason and plot. I know of no reason why the gunpowder treason should ever be forgot. V for Vendetta was directed by James McTeigue and written by the Wachowskis and came out in the year 2006, starring Natalie Portman as Evie and Hugo Weaving as V, someone labeled a terrorist by a totalitarian government that has taken control over England in a very vicious way. They've outlawed art, a harsh curfew is imposed upon everyone, and police officers that are in control are rapists and criminals themselves. And this movie is based off Alan Moore's graphic novel, which if you've never read is sprawling. It is filled with amazing characters and a ton of really great storytelling and art. Now, for me personally, this is one of those rare movies that has changed for me over time. My feelings on this film have grown. When I first saw it back in 2006, I was bombarded with marketing that told me this is a Wachowski movie. It's a movie like The Matrix. It's gonna be all action-packed. There's gonna be tons of kung fu and fight sequences. All of the trailers, mistakenly so, highlighted this very specific thing because they wanted to make money off the very recent Matrix Reloaded and Matrix Revolutions, and doing so made me, as a teenager, go to this movie thinking I was going to get this action-packed extravaganza. And yeah, there are really great action sequences in V for Vendetta, but it was also a movie that talks about politics and how a government can control its people and how a people can rise up against its government. It has a lot of ideas as well as action set pieces, and when I first saw it, I remember being disappointed by it and thinking, man, I don't get it. This movie didn't have any action sequences. I was just a teenager ready to see an action-packed movie. Over the years, this movie has grown to be one of my favorite comic book films. For a number of reasons. For one, when I first saw the movie, I thought it was going to be this big action-packed film, but it wasn't. There's action sequences, and they're very impressive and masterfully directed and edited. But as I got older, I began to appreciate things like the movie's storytelling, its performances, the direction, not just the really cool action sequences, but the fact that as a whole, this movie has an ironclad pair of balls. So why do I say that? Well, this movie came out only 5 short years after a devastating terrorist attack on America, 9/11. And this film has a main character that is labeled as a terrorist and portrays him in a sympathetic light so that we understand his motivations and what he wants to do and why he's doing it. Now, granted, the world surrounding V in this movie is a futuristic depiction of a fictionalized world in which everything has gone to shit, and there's this one government that's acting like it's not. So, in that way, you can kind of watch it and understand why someone would rise up against it. But I also must reiterate that this is a fictional film. A lot of critics, if you go back and read early reviews of this movie when it was first released, were like, this is a disturbing movie, it sympathizes with terrorism, oh, this movie is against America. And so I was like, geez, you guys are really missing the point here. It's really funny sometimes how people can just get so worked up with their own ideas about things and just attribute them to films. I've seen it so often in film reviews, and I'm not going to say that I've never accidentally done that, but I try to go into a movie and respect the film as a film and understand that this is something written and directed, and these are performances, and this is fiction. Now, if it's based off a true story, that's a different thing, but we're talking about V for Vendetta, a movie that's based off of a graphic novel. And I can easily separate that from the real world, and V for Vendetta is such a beautifully directed movie. I actually hesitate to say this was directed 100% by James McTeigue because everything he's done afterwards has never lived up to this. I kind of feel like there was a bit of a Poltergeist thing going on here. Do you guys know what I'm talking about? The original Poltergeist was directed by Tobe Hooper, but a lot of people kind of think that Steven Spielberg actually kind of directed most of that movie. Part of me feels like the Wachowskis had a lot to do with the actual shot structure in this film because it very much so does resemble the way they filmed the Matrix trilogy. It's a great looking movie with a standout performance by Hugo Weaving as V. You never see this guy's face. He's this severe burn victim. He's had a very tortured past, and he absolutely is certain that this world he exists in requires change and that he can be the one to exact that change. And when he runs across Natalie Portman's character as Evie, who's an innocent girl who gets caught up in all of this, they team up, and their relationship is one of my favorite parts of this movie because it never goes in the conventional route. You can tell they grow to love each other, but it's not the type of love that you would expect to see in a film like this. There isn't isn't a big unmasking scene where she kisses his burned face and she accepts how he looks or some stupid scene like that. It's all done in a very mature way, and I love that about V for Vendetta. What I also really like about it is that this film takes all of its principal characters and builds them in very rich ways. The best movies in regards to character development are the ones where you take a character in the beginning of the movie and the end of the movie, and you look at that person and they are completely different. Natalie Portman's evolution throughout this film to where she is at the end is humongous. Also, the police detective in this movie, Finch, who starts out hunting V and Evie, slowly starts to recognize that there's other things going on. Other things he needs to pay attention to, with his government, with the news, and you can tell as the film goes on that even he starts to doubt which side is right, which is hinted at in his introduction scene where John Hurt's face on this big monitor is talking to everyone, ordering them what to do. When everyone says England prevails, the scene ends on a close-up of Finch, and he's looking down like he's just not entirely comfortable with even saying that. You can tell there's a seed of doubt in that character just from his opening scene. And that's one of the best things about V for Vendetta. It's not just a movie with great action sequences. It didn't just rely on CGI. It has characters in it that are richly developed. For me, one of this film's biggest pluses is that it's wholly unpredictable. When this film starts, would you possibly imagine that Natalie Portman might at some point be locked up in some strange illusion meant to test her loyalty to V? Could you imagine that in this movie? And better yet, could you imagine it actually working from a narrative perspective? But it does. Every segment in V for Vendetta complements the other. Everything builds and works to such a cohesive and complete whole that the entire experience of V for Vendetta is so satisfying. As I said, it's one of my favorite comic book movies, and I'm going to give V for Vendetta an A+. It is for me that rare movie that truly has grown and changed in my mind over the years, and I've grown to really appreciate it. What do you guys think of V for Vendetta? Happy November the 5th. You guys are the best. Thank you so much as always for watching, and if you like this, you can click right here and get Stuckmanized.